My cousin secretly recorded our family game night and posted it online. In the video, my mom mocked my embarrassing career while everyone laughed. I've been supporting her financially for years, so I cut her off. I, 32M, never thought a simple family game night would destroy everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. But here I am, 3 weeks later, staring at bank statements and wondering how I became such a fool. It started on a Friday evening in October. Mom had been pushing for months about having the whole family over for one of her famous game nights. She'd been talking about how we never spend time together anymore, how I work too much, how she misses having her son around. The guilt trip was working, especially since I'd been sending her $2,800 every month for the past 4 years to help with her mortgage and living expenses after Dad passed away. The gathering felt different from the moment I walked through the front door. There was an energy in the air that I couldn't quite place. Mom seemed more animated than usual. My cousin Jake was filming everything with his phone, and my uncle and aunt were exchanging these weird looks I didn't understand at the time. We settled into our usual spots around the dining room table. Mom had pulled out Monopoly, which should have been my first red flag since she knew I hated that game. But I went along with it because seeing her happy had always been worth whatever minor discomfort I felt. About 20 minutes into the game, Jake started asking me about work. He wanted to know all about my job as a children's book illustrator, how much I made, whether I considered it a real career or just a hobby. The questions felt invasive, but family gatherings always involved some degree of awkward interrogation, so I answered honestly. That's when Mom chimed in with her commentary. She started talking about how she'd always hoped I'd grow out of this phase and get a proper job. She mentioned how embarrassed she felt when her friends asked what her son did for a living, how she had to make up stories about me being in the publishing industry because saying I drew pictures for children's books sounded so juvenile. The room erupted in laughter. My uncle started making jokes about how I was basically a professional coloring book artist. My aunt wondered aloud if I used crayons or actual art supplies. Jake kept filming, capturing every moment of what they clearly thought was harmless family teasing. But it didn't feel harmless to me. It felt like being slowly skinned alive while everyone I loved watched and laughed. I tried to defend myself, explaining that children's literature was a legitimate field, that I made decent money, that my work brought joy to kids and families. The more I explained, the harder they laughed. Mom delivered the final blow when she suggested maybe I could transition into doing artwork for greeting cards or something more mature. She said it with this patronizing tone that made it clear she'd been thinking about my career choices for a long time and found them lacking. I left early that night, claiming I had an early morning deadline. The drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I was being too sensitive, if this was just typical family dynamics that everyone dealt with. The video appeared on Jake's social media 3 days later. I found out through a text from my friend Sarah, who'd seen it shared in a local community group. She sent me screenshots with messages asking if this was really my family and whether I was okay. The video had already been viewed over 15,000 times. Watching myself get humiliated from an outside perspective was devastating. The camera had captured every moment of genuine hurt that crossed my face while my family laughed. It showed me trying to explain my work with increasing desperation while they dismissed everything I said. Worst of all, it showed Mom's face when she made her comments about being embarrassed by my career. There was no affection there, no gentle teasing between mother and son, just pure, undiluted disdain. The comments section was brutal. Strangers were calling me pathetic, agreeing with my family that I needed to grow up and get a real job. People were sharing the video with captions about adults who never learned to leave childhood behind. Someone had even created a meme using a screenshot of my confused face. I called Jake immediately, demanding he take the video down. He laughed and told me I was overreacting, that it was just family fun and everyone could see we were joking around. When I pointed out that I clearly wasn't having fun in the video, he said I needed to learn to take a joke. Then I called Mom. This conversation changed everything. Instead of apologizing or showing any concern for how the video might affect me, she spent the entire call defending what she'd said. She told me she'd only been speaking the truth, that maybe this would be a wake-up call for me to pursue something more substantial. She said she was tired of pretending my work was impressive when her friends asked about it. That's when she made the mistake of bringing up money. She mentioned how she couldn't understand why I was struggling financially if I had such a successful career. The irony was staggering. I'd been giving her nearly $3,000 every month, money that came directly from the career she found so embarrassing. I asked her point blank if she knew where her mortgage payments were coming from. There was a long pause before she admitted she'd assumed I was just helping out with extra money from side projects or something. She hadn't realized that the money keeping her house was earned from drawing pictures for children's books. That night, I made a decision that surprised even me. I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer I'd set up years ago. Then I drafted an email to Mom explaining exactly what I was doing and why. I told her that since she found my career so embarrassing and unprofessional, she probably wouldn't want to accept money earned through such juvenile means. I explained that the $2,800 I'd been sending her each month came entirely from my work as a children's book illustrator. I informed her that I'd been covering her mortgage payments, utility bills, and grocery expenses for the past 4 years using money from the job she'd publicly mocked. The email included a detailed breakdown of every payment I'd made, totaling over $134,000 in support since Dad died. I mentioned that I'd sacrificed my own financial goals, including buying a house and taking vacations, to make sure she was comfortable. I explained that I'd worked extra projects and taken on rushed deadlines to ensure I never missed a payment to her, even when my own rent was tight. I ended the email by telling her that effective immediately, she would need to find another source of income since she clearly couldn't respect the one that had been keeping her afloat. The response came within 2 hours. Mom called me crying, saying she hadn't meant what she said, that she'd just gotten caught up in the moment. She begged me to reconsider, explaining that she couldn't afford her mortgage without my help. She promised to make Jake take down the video and apologize publicly. But it was too late. The video was already viral in our local area. My professional reputation was taking a hit as potential clients saw their illustrator being mocked by his own family. More importantly, I'd finally seen how the people I loved most really viewed me when they thought no consequences would follow. I told Mom that Jake could keep the video up or take it down. That was between them. But my financial support was over permanently. If she'd managed to convince herself that my work wasn't real or valuable, she could find out how real it was when it was no longer paying her bills. Update 1. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within a week, I started receiving calls from extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Apparently, Mom had been reaching out to everyone, explaining her financial situation and asking for help. She'd painted me as cruel and vindictive, a son who'd abandoned his widowed mother over a harmless joke. My aunt called to lecture me about family loyalty. She said Mom was just trying to motivate me to aim higher in life, and that I was punishing her for caring about my future. When I explained about the 4 years of financial support, she went quiet for a moment before suggesting that maybe Mom hadn't realized how much I was helping. Uncle tried a different approach, calling to offer mediation and family counseling. He said everyone was willing to apologize if I'd just resume the payments until Mom could figure out alternative arrangements. The conversation revealed that none of them had any intention of helping Mom financially themselves. They just wanted me to continue being the family bank account. Jake finally took the video down after his own mother told him it had gone too far. But by then, it had been reshared dozens of times and saved by countless people. The damage was permanent. I'd started receiving emails from parents asking if I was the illustrator from the viral video and expressing concerns about working with someone whose own family didn't respect their career. Mom tried a new strategy after the family pressure campaign failed. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying a folder full of bills and financial documents. She spread everything across my kitchen table and walked me through her monthly expenses, showing me exactly how dire her situation had become without my support. The mortgage payment alone was $2,100. Add utilities, insurance, groceries, and car payments, and she needed almost $3,500 monthly to maintain her current lifestyle. Her Social Security and part-time work at a local boutique brought in less than $1,800. The math was clear. Without my help, she'd lose the house within 3 months. Part of me wanted to cave. Watching my mother panic about losing her home was genuinely painful. But then I remembered sitting at that table while she told a room full of people how embarrassed she was by my work, how I needed to grow up and find a real job. I remembered Jake's camera capturing my humiliation for the entertainment of strangers. I told Mom she had 3 options: sell the house and downsize to something affordable, find a full-time job that paid enough to cover her expenses, or ask the family members who'd been calling me for help. What I wouldn't do was continue funding a lifestyle for someone who had publicly destroyed my reputation and professional credibility. She left that day crying and defeated. I felt terrible, but I also felt something I hadn't experienced in years: respect for myself. Update 2. 2 weeks later, I learned that Mom had been telling people I made over $200,000 annually and was selfishly hoarding money while she struggled. She'd crafted an entire narrative where I was a successful artist who'd gotten too big for his britches and decided to punish his poor widowed mother for one innocent comment. The truth was much more complex. My annual income varied between $45,000 and $65,000 depending on how many projects I could secure. After taxes, rent, car payments, student loans, and basic living expenses, sending Mom $2,800 monthly left me with almost nothing for savings or emergencies. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck for years while maintaining her comfortable lifestyle. I'd never told her my exact income because I didn't want her to feel guilty about accepting help. Now that generosity was being twisted into evidence that I was wealthy and cruel, Sarah suggested I document everything and share my side of the story publicly. She pointed out that Mom's version of events was spreading through our community unchecked, and my professional reputation would continue suffering unless I defended myself. That's when I made another decision that surprised everyone. I created a detailed social media post explaining the entire situation. I included screenshots of the bank transfers I'd made over 4 years, totaling the financial support I'd provided. I posted examples of my published work and the positive reviews from parents and children who'd enjoyed my books. Most importantly, I explained how the viral video had affected my career and mental health. I shared emails from potential clients who decided not to work with me after seeing my family mock my profession. I talked about the humiliation of having strangers laugh at work I was genuinely proud of creating. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. Other artists shared their own stories of family members who didn't understand or respect their creative careers. Parents commented about how important children's book illustrators were in their families' lives. Several local bookstores reached out offering to feature my work more prominently, but the support also came with consequences. Mom's friends began questioning her version of events. People started asking why she'd accepted so much money from a career she claimed to find embarrassing. The narrative she'd constructed fell apart when faced with documented evidence of my support and contribution. Mom called me furious, accusing me of humiliating her publicly just like she'd accidentally done to me. She said I'd destroyed her reputation and made it impossible for her to ask anyone for help. The irony was completely lost on her. Update 3. 6 weeks after cutting off financial support, Mom was forced to put the house on the market. She'd exhausted her savings, borrowed against her retirement account, and asked every family member for money. None of them were able or willing to provide the level of ongoing support she needed. The house sold quickly in our competitive market, but after paying off the mortgage and realtor fees, Mom was left with about $85,000 in equity. She found a small apartment closer to downtown and managed to secure a full-time position at a department store that would cover her basic expenses. During the moving process, she asked if I'd help her pack and transport her belongings. I agreed, partly because I wanted to see how she was handling the transition and partly because I still loved her despite everything that had happened. The day was emotional for both of us. Going through Dad's things and packing up the house, where I'd grown up, brought back memories of better times when our family felt genuinely close. Mom seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the stress of the past month and the reality of her new circumstances. While sorting through old photo albums, she found pictures from my college graduation and early career milestones. There were images of her proudly showing my first published book to neighbors, articles about my work that she'd saved from the local newspaper, even a letter I'd written her years ago describing how fulfilling I found my career. She sat on the floor of her empty living room holding these mementos and started crying. She told me she'd forgotten how proud she used to be of my work, how she'd bragged to everyone about her artist son. She said somewhere along the way, she'd gotten caught up in other people's expectations and lost sight of what really mattered. Mom apologized sincerely for the first time since the game night incident. She acknowledged that she'd not only hurt me personally, but had damaged my professional reputation in ways that might take years to repair. She admitted that accepting my financial support while privately dismissing my career had been hypocritical and unfair. But the apology, while meaningful, couldn't undo the damage. The video was still out there in various forms. My relationship with extended family members was permanently altered. Most importantly, my trust in Mom's respect and love for me had been fundamentally shaken. I helped her move into her new apartment and even bought her groceries for the first week. But I made it clear that our relationship moving forward would be different. I wouldn't be resuming financial support, and I wouldn't be attending family gatherings where my career or life choices were considered acceptable topics for public mockery. Final update. 3 months have passed since I cut off Mom's financial support. She's adapted to her new circumstances better than expected, though our relationship remains strained and complicated. Mom's learned to budget carefully and has even started enjoying aspects of her full-time job. She's made friends with coworkers and discovered that having structured days and regular responsibilities has improved her overall mental health. The house she'd been so desperate to keep had actually become a burden she was afraid to admit she couldn't handle. We meet for coffee once or twice a month now. The conversations are careful and somewhat superficial, but they're genuine in a way they haven't been for years. She asks about my work with what seems like sincere interest, and she stopped making suggestions about my career path. My professional life has mostly recovered from the viral video incident. The supportive response to my public explanation helped offset much of the negative impact. I've actually gained several new clients who specifically sought me out after reading my story and wanting to support an artist who'd been unfairly maligned. More importantly, I've established clearer boundaries with family members about how I expect to be treated. I've stopped automatically saying yes to requests for money or time, and I've learned to recognize when people are taking advantage of my desire to help. Jake and I haven't spoken since he took down the video. I don't feel angry toward him anymore, but I also don't feel any obligation to maintain a relationship with someone who prioritized internet content over family loyalty. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. The extended family members who pressured me to resume supporting Mom have gradually stopped calling. I think they've realized that I'm not the pushover they assumed I was, and that their opinions don't carry the weight they thought they did. Looking back, I realized that cutting off Mom's financial support wasn't really about the money. It was about demanding basic respect for my choices and refusing to enable people who claim to love me while actively undermining my self-worth. Would I handle things differently if I could go back? Maybe I would have addressed Mom's attitude about my career years earlier, instead of letting resentment build up. But I don't regret standing up for myself when the situation became unbearable. The most unexpected outcome of this entire experience has been discovering my own strength. For years, I defined myself as the family helper, the person who sacrificed his own needs to keep everyone else comfortable. Learning to prioritize my own well-being and demand respect from people who claim to love me has been liberating in ways I never anticipated. Mom and I will probably never have the close relationship we once did. Too much has been said and done for us to return to our previous dynamic. But we might eventually build something healthier and more honest, based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence and unspoken resentment. The house is gone, the money is gone, and the old version of our family is gone. But I'm still here, still creating work that brings joy to children and families, still proud of the career that Mom once found so embarrassing. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough.